Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here. I'd like to welcome you all to today's roundtable on account-based marketing, ABM, for specialized media businesses to grow revenue and profits. This roundtable is brought to you by Renewed, the open network for specialized subscription, membership, and event professionals. My name is Sue Stevens, and I'm the Executive Director for Renewed Europe, and I'll be moderating today's event. If you have any questions for today's speakers, you can put them into the chat or wait for the Q&A session at the end. After the presentation, you'll have access to the recording and slides, and we'll send you an email with the link once that's available online. Please keep yourself on mute to minimize background noise. Do turn on your videos if you can. It makes a big difference to see a couple of faces. And please put your name and company in the chat box so we know who's talking and asking questions. So on to today's session. I'd like to introduce you to our two speakers, Rob Simpson, who is the Director of Innovation and Automation at Merit Data and Technology, and Helen Coetzee, who is the founder and CEO of MPG. Merit is one of Renewed's valued partner members and is a data and technology company which underpins some of the world's most trusted B2B information and events businesses with their proprietary data and technology solutions. A key service that they offer is helping companies strengthen their B2B marketing databases, improve their first-party data sets, and enable ABM. Rob will be sharing some unique knowledge, insight, and case studies today that I'm sure you'll all find relevant and useful to your businesses. It's worth bearing in mind that before joining Merit, Rob mainly worked in and with tech companies to help them grow their revenues with smart ABM approaches. So he's got lots of knowledge in this area. Helen is a marketing consultant, and she founded MPG, which is a full-service B2B marketing consultancy and agency. And Helen is here today to share some of the marketing frameworks and methodologies that MPG uses, specifically relevant to ABM. Today's session will take us through how ABM should be used for B2B marketing to target and attract your ideal customers, whether they're subscribers, attendees, sponsors, or exhibitors. So I'm going to hand over to Helen now to get the session started. Helen?
Great, thanks, Sue. Can everyone hear me okay? I'm guessing it's all good. And I'm going to share my screen. Are you going to, is that okay? I'll share my screen.
Yep.
And assume that's all working as it should. Is that all good?
Yes, all good.
Great. Okay, thank you. So thank you very much for having me here today. I'll dive straight into what account-based marketing is and then give a bit more context about why I'm talking about it. So account-based marketing is a go-to-market strategy, essentially, about targeting very specific accounts. So it's highly targeted marketing and having and sales integrated and having a very synchronized approach and content to how those accounts are targeted. So going back to that's Sue's disappeared. Never mind. Going back to the intro slide. So I'm here to talk about on this topic, invited by Merit to do so, as MPG and Merit do a lot of work together. And in MPG, the way we've built MPG over the last 10 years is very much focused on an ABM approach. So at the heart of everything we do at MPG is very, very much about targeted marketing and highly relevant marketing to specific audience groups, and making sure marketing and sales are highly integrated, which is kind of means I've spent pretty much every waking moment when I've been working over the last 10 years and even longer since before that, basically looking at how ABM can be enabled in one way or another. And Merit have some very specific capabilities that supports ABM campaigns, which is why I'm very pleased to share the stage with Rob today. In terms of why ABM is used, it's really simple. It basically drives higher engagement from the most important customers we're trying to engage with, whether they're existing customers or new customers. And the way that ABM drives high engagement is by ensuring that everything that we send to customers or the ways in which we engage with customers from a marketing and sales perspective is highly relevant, highly targeted, highly tailored to their specific needs. So essentially, it comes back to customer needs. So what every business should be thinking about at all times is, who are our ideal customers and what are the problems we're solving for them? What are the needs that we're addressing? Obviously, your product and service addresses those, but your marketing and sales needs to do that as well. Kind of seems logical. So I've got a stat here from a report published by Propolis, which is a product of B2B marketing, who some of you might know of as basically themselves a specialized media business, that 39% of marketers spend more on ABM last year than the previous year. We don't know what the stat is for 2024, but I'm sure that will come out quite soon. I expect it will be quite similar in terms of the growth of importance of ABM. On the slide, there's some more stats actually, and these are from Gartner. And what I think is most interesting and relevant here are the ones I've highlighted in the blue color, which essentially is where the money is. So, it's great to get more leads, it's great to get more traffic to your website, it's great to increase overall engagement, but the proof is in the pudding, which is basically, are those leads converting to sales? So conversion rates are absolutely key. Increase in sales pipeline, increase in average order value. So if you can get, your any marketing and sales approach that increases your conversion rate, that increases the average of your sales pipeline, that increases your average order value, has got to be a good thing. It's got to be the kind of marketing approach that one should focus on. So kind of the data is there to support it. And coming back to the point that, I think I always say the most important word in the language of marketing is relevance. If your marketing is not relevant, you won't have anyone engaging with it really in a real and impactful way. And relevance is also relative. So it can be a little bit relevant or it can be a lot relevant. And the more relevant your marketing and sales is, the more likely you're going to get higher engagement and all those good stats coming through. I think these slides will be shared afterwards and links, etc. But here's a really neat article on LinkedIn, by LinkedIn, thank you LinkedIn, about some really interesting and relevant use cases, all B2B, because this is LinkedIn, of course, that can inspire you and your teams on how to use ABM. You'll probably find at least 3 or 4 in there that are relevant. And Rob's also going to share some examples, some very specific practical examples of ABM with you later on. The question, I guess, is, apart from a marketing priority, obviously ABM should be a marketing priority, why should it be a strategic priority for a specialized media business? Why should it really be discussed and prioritized at the very top table rather than just expecting marketing to do some ABM stuff? The reason is that when you use ABM in the right way, it supports your most important KPIs in a subscription business or a business. Some events businesses as well are very focused on growing recurring revenues. The 2 most important KPIs you have are retention rate and average order value. So if you're doing ABM well, focusing first and foremost on your existing customers, and then secondly on acquiring new customers, your retention rate and your average order value will go up. Average order value is obviously the opportunity to upsell, cross-sell, especially kind of mid-contract. So if you sold an annual contract and you want to increase the value of that contract halfway through the year, ABM can help you do that. So it really should be a priority for all specialized media businesses, especially those very focused on subscriptions revenue. In terms of why ABM is important from the opportunity cost perspective, if you focus your marketing on the wrong customers and the wrong customers are being invested in, so customers being potential new customers and existing customers, then your retention rate and average order value will suffer. If you spend a lot of time trying to attract the wrong customers, you could quite successfully sell your product, your service, your subscription, your events to a company that is sort of relevant, but not ideal. What will happen if they're not close to your ideal customer, or your ideal customer is they're not going to renew, and they won't be spending more year on year. So you'll lose them. So the effort should really go into making sure you're retaining and acquiring the best customers. It seems really obvious and logical, but it's remarkable how few companies are actually putting enough effort into that very, very targeted approach. For events in particular, we know ABM is really important because ABM is what brings the right people in the room. An event works because you have the right people in the room. If you don't have the right audience members, the right speakers, the right sponsors, the right exhibitors, the right kind of guests as well, your event just won't work. An event works because you bring the right people together. To bring the right people together, you need ABM. In fact, I'd say for events, ABM is almost more important than subscriptions in some ways, because events rely on having the right customers, attracting the right customers. So it isn't just a tactic, it's a go-to-market strategy for the whole business. It should be fundamental to everything that you do. Everyone in the whole business, regardless of what their job title is, should know what your ideal customer profile is, your ICP, and they should be pursuing those customers in every way they can based on the role that they play in their business and in your business. There are 3 types of ABM. Courtesy of Informa Tech has put together this really useful blog, which explains these 3 types of ABM. So at the bottom of the slide, you can see the link and read more. There's one-to-one ABM, there's one-to-few ABM, and there's one-to-many ABM. Most of us use one-to-many ABM because we define a list we want to email, or we define a specific market we want to target with a PPC campaign. So most of us are really doing ABM in the one-to-many sense. As you go up to number 2 and number 1, it just becomes more and more targeted, essentially. There are opportunities to use AI and machine learning tools for ABM to automate repetitive tasks and prioritize key accounts, etc. In fact, Merit uses quite a lot of AI and machine learning to make sure that they can really deliver the very, very best data sets for their clients. Merit also overlays a lot of kind of the human touch as well, to make sure the quality is there and that the gaps are all completely filled in the right way. So it's important to note that AI and ML have a place, especially in all areas of ABM. So when we're thinking about targeting the right people, etc., we can use those tools, but one of the traps that we see companies fall into is thinking that they have to have machine learning and AI and automation built into their customer journeys in a really extensive way. That is not essential. You can have some really basic AI and machine learning built in, and actually a lot of it can be manual, because the more manual it is, the more in control you are, especially for the one-to-one marketing. There are definitely automations you can build in and you should build in, but don't get carried away. So be cautious with AI and machine learning when it comes to executing the campaigns, because you can easily over-engineer something that just basically needs a human touch. Usually AI and machine learning works in the terms of executing their campaigns and responding to how customers are feeding back and engaging. Works for really large data sets, large homogeneous markets, but it's important when we are executing on ABM campaigns that we stay grounded, stay focused, and just get the job done. So let's not get hung up on whether or not we're using AI and ML. They are means to an end, not an end in itself. Interesting that B2B marketing says that ABM as a term is likely to fall away at some point, and we'll start using terms like qualified buyer groups and team sourced pipeline. So they're the same, they all mean the same thing, but essentially they are the qualified customers that you really want to reach. And team source pipeline means marketing and sales working together to source the pipeline. I'll wrap up with 3 key ingredients for ABM. One is ICP data, our ideal customer profile data. The second is hyper-personalization, and the third is multi-channel marketing. ICP data is really where Merit comes in in a big way to help customers find the right data to target and do that in a really efficient way. So it's about continually building, enhancing, and updating your customer data set that is essential to you for ABM, and organizing that data in a way that you can use in a really kind of efficient and effective and simple, practical way to run your ABM campaigns. So without that data piece working well, that's number one for a reason, because if that data piece isn't done and you haven't invested the right amount of time, effort, and money into that piece, the rest of your ABM won't work. First and foremost, you need the data to work. Secondly is a hyper-personalization, which relies on the data to work well. So hyper-personalization is having really personal, relevant messages going to the people who you've got on your database, who you've identified as your ABM accounts. So in MPG, for example, in our HubSpot that we've set up for our own marketing, we've identified some ABM accounts that we have marked up in HubSpot using their ABM functionality, and that's where some of the machine learning automation can help. And we make sure that those particular accounts only get certain types of messages from us based on what is highly relevant to them. So even a small business like MPG can do these things just with a little bit of customization of some fairly commonly used tools like HubSpot. Thirdly, it's the multi-channel marketing, hosting relevant customer journey. So essentially, ABM doesn't just rely on you emailing the same names again and again and again with relevant messages. It's about making sure when they hit the website, what they see is relevant to them, the email's relevant to them, the website's relevant to them, the events that you invite them to, the referral marketing that you activate, all brings in the ideal customers, and every step of the customer journey feels relevant and valuable to the customer who you want to engage. And that requires the whole customer journey to be looked at, not just the emails. It's when they click on the email, where do they go? What do they see? How do you make sure that's highly relevant and valuable to them? I have an example here. I won't go through it now, but essentially it's a real live example that MPG's worked on around building customized customer journeys where every single touch point is relevant to a particular buyer group. You'll be seeing these slides, as I say, and there's a link at the bottom so you can have a look. The question, that I always ask my team is, how can it be done? In MPG, we don't accept something can't be done. We always ask ourselves how it can be done. How can it be done? Because there's always a way. Even if you can do something in a small way, you can still do it. And also we think about asking the right questions. So when you go back to your business, what I would recommend you do is you ask your team the right questions when it comes to ABM. And these questions, the top 5 questions are, does our ABM plan, obviously, do we have an ABM plan? What is the ABM plan? Obviously, is a good one. But if we're doing ABM, does our ABM plan really focus on the customers we want to retain and grow? And does it have all of those customers in our ABM program? Have we clearly defined within even the ABM lists, even the targeted list, do we know exactly who our most valuable customers are? Those top 5 customers we want to retain, upsell, and grow. The top 5 targets we really want to be attracting as customers to our business, and are we really focusing enough of our efforts on those customers? And then what is the best way to reach and engage with them? For some, it might be dinners with some follow-up, communications from a very senior person in the business. For others, it might be some kind of direct mail piece that will engage them and bring them to your website. Others, it might be a series of emails. So it's really thinking about what your target customer will respond to, and have we set up our database and tech stack in the right way so that we can do ABM at scale. Obviously, we can do it one-to-one, but then you have to be able to do it one-to-many as well. And finally, how can we get and keep all our stakeholders internally on board and aligned? All our stakeholders internally aren't aware of the ABM we're trying to do, understand the ABM we're trying to execute on, they can't support it. So we really need to get all our stakeholders involved. And that's it really in terms of what I can share with you that I think is useful as you approach your ABM planning. There isn't, always ask what's the action plan? What are you going to take away? There's a list here, an 8-step plan. I won't go through it now, but essentially you want to make sure you go through every step in a logical order. So you always start with making sure your business strategy is understood, you have clear goals, and that you know who your customers are. And then you work through the process of identifying customers, who you want to target, mapping out their customers' journeys, building the campaigns, running the campaigns, measuring the campaigns, and then making sure that you've got everyone on board with good communications throughout. There's some more some recommended reading on our blogs that you can have a look at, and Rob will have some more that he can share with you, and some examples here that I won't go into now, but they'll be on your package that you can take away afterwards. And I will now hand over to Rob.
All right, good stuff. Thanks very much, Helen. I'll share now. I'll make sure everyone can see. Helen, my slides are not, my screen's just not sharing. Do you have access to my slides?
Okay, if you just quickly send them over on an email, and then maybe we can jump to some questions, Sue, or some comments in the meantime.
Yeah, I think there haven't been too many. David Foster was just saying it's causing leaders to overestimate market size. I don't know, David, which section of that you were referring to. And that is a common reason for product failure.
Maybe David wants to expand a little bit for us while we have an ad break. We're going to have a David Foster ad break. See there? Has he gone away?
David Foster might be having his own ad break.
Okay.
Does anyone else have any questions that they'd like to ask?
I've got the link, Sue, so okay. I can start sharing now. Hold on. Where am I? Here we go.
Actually, Helen, if I quickly quit and rejoin, I can share, I think.
Okay, fine. Sorry, everyone. Technical problems. Well, should we see if anyone wants got some questions or comments they want to contribute?
May I ask a question? Hi, Helen.
Hi.
I'm from SCI. Really loved everything you've taken us through. I'm quite new in the HubSpot realm, and I was really interested in what you were saying about HubSpot and what work you were doing on that, or the messaging you were sending out as part of your ABM strategy. Would you be able to kind of go into that in a bit more detail, if that's okay?
Rob's back. Rob, are you back? Rob's back. I'll tell you what, Isabel, thank you for the question. What I'm going to do is I'll see if I can gather my thoughts, and then at the end of once Rob's done his presentation, I'll come back and answer you if that's okay.
Fabulous, thank you.
Great, thank you.
Okay, great. Sorry for that, everybody. Technical issue. Have you got my slides now? You can see this.
Okay. Yes, we can.
Perfect. All right. Well, thanks very much for having me here. Nice to be here. A very quick introduction, and then I'll jump into some ABM examples. So my name is Rob. I'm a technical marketer. So although I'm now working at Merit as innovation director, my whole background is from the marketing side of things. And I've spent a lot of time in-house, 8 years or so, in various startups, toy companies, events tech businesses, all sorts of stuff. I then, after that, started my own B2B marketing agencies, focusing mainly on lead generation. We then helped all sorts of companies with ABM, and the idea was that we'd help people find the right audience, define what they would say to them, and then build really interesting campaigns for those people to get them in touch with the people they need to speak with. So they're kind of one-to-one and one-to-many campaigns. In the course of doing that, I met Merit, and then I ended up, it wasn't long before I joined them as part of their team, and it's now been my task over the last year or so to rebuild the data gathering process for them. So I'll quickly go through some stuff. It's worth talking about who Merit are. We're, in essence, data specialists. We help people produce really high quality data to allow them to achieve more. We work with a bunch of events and other kind of businesses, shipping, maritime, other sorts of things. We do 3 types of data for people in general. It's all sorts of stuff really, but Today, we're going to talk mainly about the marketing data and the campaigns behind that. So this really, if you think about it in its essence, is building company lists to spec, building contact lists to spec, and then also validation as well. So those first two are fairly self-explanatory, but validation also is, for example, if you have a CRM that's slightly out of date, or a list from something like an event or a campaign where people have given you their data and it's now been 6 months, a year since you've contacted them, we can take that data and sort of take Rob and Robert and nicknames and things and produce that into a validated email list with addresses and phone number and all sorts of other data for people. All right, so today's topic actually is about ABM and the marketing behind that. So I thought, rather than spend too much time on the building sort of lists of data and things, I'd jump into the interesting part, which is what can you do with the data? Some campaign ideas and examples from my previous agency. Maybe that will spark some discussion up and we can chat through and maybe solve some problems for you guys as well. So you can't do ABM without the right data. It's kind of impossible to. If you can't trust the data that's behind your campaigns, how can you send out things that are anything more than first name based email campaigns? I want to walk you through a quick example of a sort of general style campaign, an example of what you can do when you've got access to the right data. So take an example here. You're targeting a company and they've just hired a new marketing director. So maybe we do something interesting for that person. We want to get in touch with them and maybe spark up a conversation. So rather than just emailing them, perhaps we do this instead. We send a package to them with a handwritten address, an envelope. Inside there's a book, and that might be something that's recommended by their peers. So other marketing directors have recommended this. And then when they open that, or on the front cover of that, sorry, there's a post-it note which says, congratulations, Rob, I really think you'll love this book. Not any address or who it's from or anything at this point, just purely cryptic and a nice thing to receive. And maybe when they open the book, a small card falls out. And that could be a QR code, which when they scan, it goes to a personal page, which is made just for them. Or if you want to be really kind of clever and kind of on the border, you could buy the keyword, the Google word of their name. So you could say, go and search your own name, go and search Rob Simpson. And there's an ad that pops up and says, it's us, we want to speak to you and here's why. Anyway, either way, how they get to it, there's a personal page that's made just for them. And it says, glad you got it, Rob. Congratulations again, and here's why we sent it to you. And it's now that we can start to articulate what we do as a business and really say what we do in relation to them, rather than just a one-size-fits-all message that's just, this is what we do. Read it, and then please find out from that if it's relevant to you. We can say, we know a few things about you. We don't want to be too creepy, but we know a few things. You're new in the role, so that means you're there to make some changes. And we saw from your site, you work with the business X and Y, which is great, because we have events. Maybe if we're kind of marketing events, we say we've got events that's maybe have 400 of those in the. Hello, anyone? Question? No, just random noise, that's fine. So we've got an event with 400 or so of those similar businesses, if you want to meet more of those and maybe sell to those people. And we also notice you've got some international marketing teams, and we've got events in those markets too. We can also then use some work examples that are really relevant to them. Rather than giving our best 3 sort of generic ones, we can take our best 3 from their industry, or maybe based on the use case we think for those, for them. We can then do some interesting calls to action. So we don't want to just say, fill in the form. We can have a book a call directly on the page, which is great. We can pre-fill that with the data that we know about them, so they only got 1 click to do. But if they don't, we know they've been on the page because it's made just for them. Which actually it's not that difficult to do. It's kind of, we can talk about some methods if you'd like to. It's not what Merit does, but if anyone's curious, I'm always happy to talk about that. But if they don't sign up on the page, we know they've been there. And so maybe a couple of hours later, we could automate a LinkedIn connection to that person to say, I saw you saw the page, just wanted to see what you thought. And that might start up a one-to-one conversation. And of course, if they don't connect back or they don't reply, maybe a week later or a couple of days later, we send them an email follow-up, just check if they got it or not. Why would you go to this link? I mean, as I mentioned there, it sounds kind of really complex and things, but that's only a handful of small automations that can allow you to do something like that. But the reason why we do something like this rather than just an email campaign is if we've got a really specific audience, we want to make sure we hit them with the right message in the right way, first time and not burn that list. If we're sending just a random email to them, they might reply at a rate of 1%, whereas in this case, we've had an average of 45% reply rate up to 85% reply rate on some of them. It's automatable, but still very personal. If you've got the right data and the right structure, all of those things that I've just mentioned are possible with either a spreadsheet upload into your HubSpot or something similar to that. If not all marketing is relevant all the time, right? So maybe 5% of your audience are in buying mode, but that's really difficult to figure out. There are some industries where you can sort of find out based on SEO or whether they've updated their site in a long time. But in general, we've just got to sort of market to them the right way and hope that they're in the right buying mode. But best thing about this is if it's not relevant, you haven't annoyed them with this communication. It's kind of interesting, and they may even hold on to it. We've had a few examples in the past where people have met us at events for our own marketing and said, oh, it's you guys with this. We've still got that on my desk, the thing that we sent to them. So it's brand building. You're not going to upset anyone with this marketing, even if it's not exactly the right time. And it means perhaps when it is the right time for them to buy, your name will be top of the list. And also, it's a great way to showcase what you do. I say later in the slides, there's no point using tech for technology's sake. I mean, I'm a tech person, so it's I've got a high propensity to use tech where it's not necessarily necessary. But if you can make this about what you do, or kind of demonstrate what you do as part of the marketing, it's a really nice way of sort of showing what can be done with your product. As an example, my previous lead gen agency, we'd show a page and say, look, here's the information we found on you, and here's the information we found on the rest of the market. So if this is what we could do with 5 seconds worth of time, imagine what we could do with full consultation and working alongside you. That's a generic example, and it's just in one sort of vertical. I just want to share a couple of other examples of creative campaigns that we've done to very specific audiences and the kind of results that you might be able to expect. So in this case, this was during COVID. Seems a distant memory now. These guys were a design agency for just food and drink companies, so really niche. And there's not that many of them in the world. So they didn't want to send something that's going to burn that list really quickly. They wanted to do something interesting. They created a little tin of mask mints. So when you're wearing a mask, you can smell your own breath. And that was something kind of a funny angle that they picked up on. They made a really nice sort of tin and branding for a fake brand in kind of Victorian style branding, and sent these out with really nice handwritten notes. All of that was automated. The handwritten notes were done by a machine and everything else with a real pen. But they targeted Great Taste Award winners as a way in. They said, congratulations on the award. This is what we do, and we'd love to work with you guys. That was a really nice campaign for them. And aside from the inquiries, they also won an award for this themselves. So they got into the industry paper and got in front of much more people than they really were targeting. Co-working spaces. This is a tricky one. So because of WeWork, paid advertising, so PPC, pay-per-click, is not really on the table. I don't know what it is now, but at the time it was $50 a click because WeWork had bid it up so much. And if you think you're going to maybe convert possibly 1% of all the people that click onto your site, it becomes pretty much impossible for any small player to compete with that. So for these guys, we created a sort of digital image builder, which took a picture of a bunch of offices. We took their logo from their site and superimposed it on the door of the office. We put their founder's name on a piece of post on the table. And we also found the travel times from their existing office to where we were proposing they move to this co-working space, and had the travel times from under there. This one was really cool. This was an email, delivered as an email with an attachment, 92% open rate, 24% reply rate on this one. I wanted to send a key, physical key. They didn't have the budget for this, or they kind of sort of chickened out, but reasoning behind this is a key feels valuable, right? So even if it's key to nothing, if you see a key on the floor, you think, oh, that's kind of, it draws your attention more than a piece of paper or any other kind of couple of quid piece of plastic you might send. It's cheap to scale, and we could stick it to the thing and say, this is the key to your new office. Come and try it out and come and check it out. Next one, this is not necessarily for sales, but it's the long way around. So some of you might be into sort of community building or thinking about that as a way around. This one here is a machine learning ops tech company, and their thought was there's no community that's really comprehensive for machine learning people. So they created a Slack group And they use this kind of marketing. They use personalized invites on LinkedIn. So just really quick connection, automated connection invites to targeted people and say, look, it looks like you're one of the prominent people in the industry. We'd love to have you in our community. Really simple, actually. They ended up building the world's largest community for these guys within that. And they ended up selling it for a really nice amount of money. But that wasn't the intention. They used it for finding podcast guests. So the guy that created this community was then doing a podcast also, and he would handpick who he wanted to speak to, which was great. He then got 2 hours to speak with these people in the best kind of veiled sales pitch that he could imagine. This one's a SaaS product. So this one here, so an employee rota software. I like this example because they sell to businesses that have employees on rota. So people who do shift work and that kind of thing, which is actually really difficult to target. You can do it by industry and say food and drink or retail, but you don't necessarily know these people are going to have people on rota. So they didn't want to say just proactively, we know you've got people on rota, because they couldn't know that. So they worked with us to do something a little interesting on here. Instead of going through normal LinkedIn way, we went through Glassdoor, so the employee review site, and we found all the mentions to the word rota, timetable, anything like that. And then we used a bit of AI on top of this and said, what are the negative mentions here? So the thing doesn't work very well, or I missed my shift because the tech didn't work and now I'm getting punished for it. We then played that back to people in one of those personalized landing pages that I mentioned earlier and said back to their ops director, we found this on Glassdoor, and here's a roundup of all the issues that your staff have with your rota. We can fix this for you. And so we played back each of the issues and then had a payoff line and said, this is how we fix it with our software. Really cool. That was right as AI was just beginning or just becoming available in the mainstream. And they got a meeting with Burger King COO and closed the deal with those guys. So they were really happy with it. A couple of things to remember with these kind of creative campaigns is they can be creepy. You can see some of those are borderline, and we've done a lot of them over the past 8 years or so and figured out there's a few things that can help guide you in that. So don't try and be too creepy. Don't play back stats, direct stats to people unless you can avoid it. So if you say, I see you've added 2 marketing members, it's rather better to say you've added, you're growing your marketing team. That's great. The more specific you get, the more chance that you've picked up some slightly incorrect data, and they'll sort of stop listening if they see an incorrect stat in there. No tech for technology's sake. I mentioned this before. Don't just try and shoehorn the new technology in there because you feel like you should. Doesn't always have to be. Test small segments regularly. We used to do these in groups of maybe 100 or 200 as we got started, and then we'd scale it up to 500, 1,000, 2,000 a week if we were happy with how the campaign was performing. And my job title has got automation in it, and I can say this. So it's not everything should be automated. Sometimes you just have to scroll spreadsheets, really eyeball stuff because you know yourself what's relevant for your business or not. You might want to send something in the post, and in which case I've been to the post office with 2 big bags full of books in envelopes. It's worth doing. So it feels a little bit more difficult, but it's worth working on. As I mentioned at the beginning, good data is the foundation for all this stuff. And what I mean by this is it's accurate, so you can rely on it. It's complete in that it's got all of the fields that you need. So we talked about some things there, email address to send people DMs. You need it quickly because once you make the decision, you don't want to hang around waiting for this data. It has to be cost effective. That's a factor of any marketing campaign because you're expecting a return. And the last one is flexibility. So if you want things like Glassdoor data, where do you get that from? All the stuff that is not available, readily available, that's where the gold really is. So don't try and be limited by what is available just by buying. Think about what you might be able to acquire if you really put your mind to it. And getting it wrong is painful. I'm sure you've had some experiences with this before. If you email the wrong people and they accept a meeting and go through to your salespeople, they'll be upset that you sent unqualified or not well qualified leads through to them. If you get the data wrong and you're approaching the wrong people or with the wrong message, you can upset a few people. They may not tell you, but perhaps a potential customer of yours will kind of blackball you and think, I'm never working with those guys. They don't put enough effort in. There's also some technical damage to your reputation. So this is becoming more and more important. Your email deliverability, this is the lifeblood of many businesses. And if you're spamming people or sending too many emails and they're bouncing and the data is not correct, this is going to harm your deliverability very fast. It's quick to damage and it's really difficult to recover. I've seen a lot of businesses get this wrong. So it's better to start small and be as accurate as possible and then scale, rather than think, we've got some big targets, so let's start big. Let's just get the biggest list we can and message them straight away. And how do you get this kind of data? As I mentioned, I've spent most of my career as a in-house or agency marketer. So I've tried all of these things in various ways, and I know kind of the pros and cons of each. DIY is great. You get what you need if you have the technical ability to do so, but it's expensive in your time. I'm sure a lot of you on this call are kind of founders or sort of senior folks, senior marketing folks. So you don't really want to spend your time trying to code things up and working through spreadsheets and things. You can work with list builders, those who collect contacts and then sell segments or whole lists to people. These are my least favorite, because you can only buy what they have, and they'll kind of tell you, oh, this is fresh data, yeah, but you have no real way of knowing when that was gathered. You've got freelancers, which are those from Upwork, Fiverr, those kind of guys, which can be good if you find a good person in there. Consistency is difficult here, consistency and scale. So you have to teach that person, and if they suddenly get a better job, they're going to move on, and you have to now teach somebody else. And if you want to scale up in a task that's too big for those people, you have to train another bunch of people. There's no team element to it, no economies of scale. And last one is data platforms. And this is your Apollos, Cognisms, ZoomInfos, that kind of thing. And these are good and they're very popular. If we were all in person, I'd ask you to put hands up who uses these, but I'm sure some people use these platforms. I've used them a lot. And I'm just going to talk through why I ended up doing it differently, and just kind of highlight some of the sort of pitfalls of doing it in this way that might help you with some of your campaigns. All right, so that's these guys. And as I mentioned, I've used these a lot in all sorts of ways. The key trait is actually, this is their marketing message, right? We have a huge database. But when you look at it, this is actually their downfall. Right? So they have a large database. There's 282 million, hundreds of millions, 321 million. Sounds impressive, and that's from their websites. But when you look at LinkedIn, which is the best source of the most up-to-date data, there's 1 billion users on there. So even the best case scenario, you might be missing sort of 66% of your audience. And what this also means is that all of the people who are users of that platform are fishing from the same 33% of LinkedIn. So the people who are in there are getting hammered more than the other people, so they might be less receptive to marketing. And the markets that are not on LinkedIn, so if you're targeting Middle East, any of those sort of Asia, Middle East, they're much less prominent on LinkedIn. And it's really tricky to get that data off there. The reason they're difficult is because they're hard to maintain. I've done a lot of this as well. Unfortunate thing about people is that they change jobs roughly once every 3 and a bit years, which means your data, as soon as you store it, your CRM, in fact, as well, that's 8% of it a quarter will go out of date on average, and a third a year. And it's difficult enough just to keep a small CRM in track, but if it's like 300 million, they can't keep up. They can't scrape enough data to really make that work. A really quick example here from Apollo. This is a really popular platform because it's nice and cheap, and it's got good data for companies, and it looks really good for contacts. But you can do this yourself if you filter it, if you have Apollo. Go into when it was last updated, and I checked, last updated in the last 12 months, and it's only 18% of their database, which is shocking actually. So, 4 out of 5 are not updated in the last year. And this is still why I still get emails from people looking to sell to me in my Measure Grow marketing role, my previous agency, even though I haven't been there in 9-10 months. In fact, I got one this morning as well. And it means the first impression is not good. I know, they say, I saw you on LinkedIn in the first line of the email. They didn't, because it says I don't work there on LinkedIn. And it kind of ruins the whole facade. It's also a shared pool of data which you can unsubscribe from, right? So everyone's using the same data. And if somebody spams that data and someone gets annoyed enough, goes to ZoomInfo and unsubscribes from that, nobody on ZoomInfo can ever market that person again. So ZoomInfo have to remove it from their database. So one person's bad actions can kind of spoil it for anyone else who's playing by the rules. So a bunch of things, and I don't want to labour the point too much, but this is kind of why I've joined Merit and why we've helped build this in a different way. Our database is zero, so we do not have a database. We don't store anything. We have a bit of data on companies, but the sort of thing that changes regularly, we do not store. So contacts, anything like that. And the reason is, firstly, it's yours. So you've paid for it to be gathered. So why would we then use that for somebody else and sort of try and make double revenue of it? But it's also collected live each time. We force ourselves to connect it live, which means there's basically zero time between when we collect it and you get it. So it's as up to date as it possibly can be, which means you can have confidence when you market to them saying, I can see you work here, you know they work there. Also from multiple sources. I mentioned that some people are not so prevalent on LinkedIn, Middle East, a few other areas, or some industries actually are not that prevalent on LinkedIn. And the information you want might not be on LinkedIn as well. You might want something about the clients they work for. And we can get from multiple sources. So as a really basic example, their website. If we don't find the person we're looking for on LinkedIn, maybe we'll go to their website and have a look. And how we do this is, I think Helen mentioned this at the beginning, it's a finely tuned mix of automation, AI and human hands. So we do lots of automation. We spend a lot of time on that. That's the majority of my job, is building these systems, checking and validating with AI that it matches the brief that you've supplied to us. And then we've got a really large team of very skilled humans who've done this for years as well, who do two things. They sort of clean up anything that's been missed by AI, but also they can do the stuff that cannot be done by AI. So if you need a really sort of specific piece of data, they can go and do that for you. This is a thing that you kind of overlook. I'm sure some of you might have experienced this if you've worked with ZoomInfo, Apollo, any of those guys. If you get stuck, there's not much they can do to help you. Their business model is scale and platform based. But if you're not really sure, you're thinking, I want to target these people, but I don't really know how best to do this. In this respect, Merit kind of works like an agency, like a data team. So you can speak with us and we can help translate your thoughts and your sort of ideas into a proper brief to help you. We don't expect just a finished brief to come in the door. And also there's no new tech to learn, which is always nice. You don't have one oracle in the team who is the ZoomInfo person. And when they're on holiday, everyone's stuck. There's a bit about how you actually do this. So some of the examples I gave above have some reasonably complex data in them as backings. We can make this kind of stuff simple for you. And a really easy example that is a good comparison versus these platforms is prioritization. So if you've got a list of 5,000 companies that you want to get contacts from, perhaps firstly you want to get the CEO. But if there's no CEO present, maybe you want the marketing director. And if there's no marketing director, then maybe get anyone from the marketing team who has experience in branding. Really loose example. If you were to do that on some of the other tools, you've got to sort of download multiple versions of this, do lots of VLOOKUPs, lots of sorting, and try and figure out that you've got the priority of those ones in the right order. With us, it's built in, so we can get 5 from each, 5 from that tier, 5 from that tier, and then 10 from the last tier. Super, super simple. Also, the data that other people can't get. So I mentioned DMs in here and like direct marketing. I used to love doing those in my agency. They're really impactful if you've got a high value target to reach out to. But it's really difficult to get the physical address of that person. I'm not talking about their home address. I'm talking about the office address where they probably work. Say IBM, for example, they've got 10 or 20 offices in the UK. Unless you go through there or sort of pay an intern to go through there and have a look and try and find the closest office address to that person, that is super difficult. But we've built an automation to do this for us, so which again is cleaned up by human hands. So you can get this really, really easily. And the last one is clean company name. This seems like such a simple one, but people don't really supply it. Right? So if my company name on LinkedIn is ABC Limited, it's very rare in a marketing communication you'd say, hey, Rob, I see you work at ABC Limited. You might just say ABC, or there might be a logical abbreviation you can use. So when we supply data, we give you 2 company names back. Firstly, the whole company name, and then also what we call clean company name. So you can upload that to HubSpot and use it without having to scroll through and clean limited, private limited, emojis, anything in brackets, all that stuff is cleaned out so you can have confidence in your communications. Pricing is not, I'm not a salesperson, so it's not really my thing, but it's worth mentioning this is per project pricing. So you don't have to lock in with us and become a sort of member of merit to be able to use our services. You can use it for a single project. You can sign up for recurring projects and work with us, but effectively it means there's no lock-in and there's no credits that build up and then get wasted if you don't use them, or are the limiting factor if you suddenly have a spike of data requirements. And as I mentioned, we're a data team. That's how you can think of us, not a product. We've got a couple of hundred people who are really skilled in finding and cleaning this data, and they're really fun to work with. And just to summarize very quickly before we can talk about some questions and maybe other examples that you might have, this is what we do. We produce reliable, high quality data in a way that's really simple for you to use in marketing campaigns. So the whole system is built by with marketing in mind, rather than just we must harvest this data. It's more like, how can we make this usable for marketers so that their job is easier? Most people don't get into marketing to do the spreadsheet stuff. They get into marketing to do the copy and the creative and the cool stuff. So we want to let you do more of that. All right, so thank you very much. That was a fairly whistle-stop tour through quite a lot of information. So let me know if you've got any specific questions or things you want to talk about, maybe examples. Even if it's not about merit, maybe it's about some of my previous work or things that we might be able to solve for you. Happy to help.
Great, thanks, Rob. Does anyone have any questions or anything that they would like to ask Rob or Helen? I think they were quite comprehensive presentations, and I'm sure everyone is looking forward to getting the slides afterwards, which we will share.
We could come back to Isabel's.
We
could come back to Isabel's question. So Isabel's, if I could just kind of address at a high level, was saying SCI uses HubSpot. I'm guessing the ABM piece isn't set up yet in HubSpot, and kind of where to start, I guess, would be a framing of that question. Isabel, is that okay? Maybe you can just.
I was just typing, but
yeah.
Yes, nailed it.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, so the place to start, and often often we'll go, oh, what's the HubSpot functionality? Let's go and have a look, because there's a link here. I've just kind of Googled, if you like, went onto the HubSpot website, and I'll just pop it into the chat here for everyone that you can read what HubSpot says about how they do ABM. Essentially, it's how you set up some of the workflows to ring fence your ideal customer profile, companies and people, and then how you build that out into workflows with certain communications along the way. Some of which can be automated through triggered emails if they take certain actions. And then also, if HubSpot's integrated with your website, you can create some workflows where if they hit certain pages on your website or they take certain actions, click a number of emails, or click an email and then hit a certain page on your website, that they get a certain automated message sent to them. So those kind of workflows with different branches, the if this then that kind of model that you can build in HubSpot. And HubSpot will also help you identify other companies and people on your database that look like your ideal customer profile. So maybe 10 companies you want to look for, but HubSpot has some tools that help you find another set of companies that kind of look like that, those 10 and those people. The other thing that we find most useful in HubSpot, actually, I find personally most useful, is when we're running campaigns, and we've got someone in our, we've got a set of data in our database. When I say campaigns, we have a newsletter that people subscribe to called MPG Insights. So once, we have a subscription list, and that's people have actively subscribed to say, every time you publish a piece on MPG Insights, we'd like to get an email, please. So every time an email goes out with a new piece of content, a blog or a resource to this list of people who have subscribed, and sometimes we send emails to people who haven't subscribed, we've got a target set of 20 companies. For MPG, what we're monitoring is the largest companies. We work with companies of all sizes and we value them all, but we're quite keen to know how the really large companies are engaging with us, because there's certain types of services that we at the moment, certain types of services we're trying to sell to the larger businesses in a way we wouldn't sell them to the smaller businesses. So what we've done is we've set up those companies, and every time anyone from one of those companies who we identified is on HubSpot clicks on an email or one of the emails we've sent, or hits our website and the cookies are enabled for that person, I get a notification through Slack, because we've integrated HubSpot with Slack. So I get through Slack, I just get a little message that pops up and says, this person from this company has clicked on this email or visited this web page. And that's helpful, right? Because I can see sometimes we haven't even set, it might not be a campaign we sent today, it might be a campaign we sent weeks ago. And sometimes I see a flurry of activity. So all of a sudden, loads of Informa marketers will suddenly go to our website, and it's because someone in Informa has forwarded something on, they forwarded on a statement of work that we've sent them, or they forwarded on some training materials that we used to train some of their marketers, or something's happened that has meant all of a sudden everyone in Informa is talking about MPG. And we can see that very quickly. And then what I tend to do when that happens is I'll go into LinkedIn, and the people I know, because I know quite a lot of those marketers, is I'll just drop them a little message and say, is there anything we can do for you? Are you interested in our training? I noticed that, Informa marketers are taking a great interest in what we do at the moment, being quite vague, not creepy, as Rob said. I can't say, I see you clicked on this email and visited this webpage. So what I'd say is something like, I see that, there's a lot of interest at the moment from Informa. This is the kind of training course that we find is most popular with Informa marketers. Is this something you're interested in? Or this is the kind of service that we're finding, we've over the last month, 3 divisions of Informa have started buying our PPC services. Is this something you're interested in? Because it gives them safety. So because other divisions of Informa are buying our stuff, it's kind of safe for them to also buy our stuff. So that's just an example in our world of what that looks like. And I think that applies very much also for subscriptions businesses, because you can see which companies are most engaged and which pages they're visiting. And then you can find a way to kind of directly contact them, or build some automations to contact them, to really enhance that engagement, to essentially amplify that engagement and get them even more engaged. And while they're paying attention to you, you are making sure that you're delivering as much useful information to them as possible while they are in that mindset of thinking about your business. Does that help, Isabel?
Yes, thank you. Absolutely does. I've been really busy noting down everything you're saying. Yeah, it all sounds amazing. And it sounds like you have a lot of integrations, which I don't think we do have currently. But Magda has dropped a note there as well. So I think it would be valuable to connect and find out a bit more detail on it as well. I really appreciate the direct answer. Thank you so much.
Good. Okay.
Thanks. Helen, we've had a question. Actually, this one might be for Rob, just very quickly, from Nolan, who's got a large database, and the company name, they just give a company name, but it's a really large company. How, if you found any way of populating the industry sector?
Yeah, absolutely. I used to try and tackle this a lot, and I'll give you two ways. The first way, I'd be wrong if I didn't say, is Merit can do that. So that's part of our Validate service. You can update kind of what we would call a dirty list of stuff. So it's like nicknames, kind of vague company names and vague job titles, and we can populate the rest, email addresses, and enrich it with phone numbers, industry, whatever you want. So that's the answer I have to say. And then also, depending on budget, and things that you might just have a really small list you want to work through. Sometimes you can, you might be able to sort of cobble this together with scraping of LinkedIn. It depends on your technical ability, but you might be able to kind of connect a company name with a LinkedIn account. There are some tools that you can use to do this. Some scraping tools like Phantom Buster is a decent place to start, as pretty user friendly. But it won't have the layer of intelligence on top. So if it's an exact match name, that'll probably do it for you. But if there are 2 companies with the same name, you might struggle. But certainly have a crack at it with something like that and see what results you get. But if not, let us know and we can probably help you out with that.
Thanks, Rob. And then I know we're 1 minute over. We have one other question from Gloria, probably one for you, Helen, just in terms of creating your ideal target list. Would you start with creating credentials or qualifiers and then create a target list of customers who meet those qualifiers? Or would you suggest grabbing customers that you would like to target and then creating lookalikes or copies of those?
Both. I'd call top down and bottom up. So use the customers you've got, analyze them, figure out what they have in common, what specifically about them that makes them ideal for you, create their profile, do the top down. Okay, let's just imagine, and then see, where they meet.
Great. Thanks, Helen. Hopefully that answers your question. And I think with that, we're officially out of time. Thank you, everyone, for attending. And huge thanks, Rob and Helen, for joining us and for all the work you put into these presentations that you've shared with us. And we will share the recording and slides with everyone afterwards. So thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Bye.